Good morning, everyone. There's a few more seats up front here if you want. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Just step up your automation, monitoring, and reporting game with Workspace ONE UEM APIs. My name is Joshua Clark. I'm a solutions architect at Southern Company, and been a user of AirWatch for about 5.5 years now. Just by show of hands, how many of you have used any of the AirWatch or Workspace ONE APIs? Good. We got a few in here. So hopefully this will help expand knowledge and give you somewhere to go and show you some of the stuff that I've done at least, and be happy to speak with any of you. Hopefully it'll be informative for the rest of you, help you get started into the API journey. So we'll start off with an agenda here. A couple things we'll cover is, why not just use the console that's there? It's got a lot of great stuff in it. We'll go into some metrics and monitoring use cases, some business intelligence, how to take your own data in and use that, and then of course how to take some automation and really ease your use of things by getting some of your work automated, and then some resources on where to get started with things. So, what's wrong with the console? Absolutely nothing. It's a great experience. One of the things when we first started looking at AirWatch in 2012, one of the things that drew it to me was the console. It's HTML5. It was nice and snappy. It wasn't an MMC like some of the other ones out there. So it was really nice, really refreshing. But there's some things that it doesn't do, especially if you're a power user. There's some shortcomings that come up with it. So one of the things maybe that a certain workflow isn't supported. So got an example here. Yeah, you can multiple select devices. You can add tags to them. Great, I can do some bulk tag actions. But where's the bulk remove? There's not one. So nobody wants to be sitting there, going to each device and then removing a tag. So so great. So that's a use case that I've solved. I've got some sample code that I can share later with that. Some other stuff. Maybe things don't look the way you want them to in the console. One of my pet peeves when they first came out with the dashboard was they're not to scale. So you'll have 20 devices that look like about a quarter of your 20,000. So here's the same data with it actually to scale. Sometimes it's really nice to visualize things in a completely different way. So I like to use word clouds and stuff. It's a great way to see some of the ways that some of how our environment looks. So you see by seeing this is a count of devices for each of these things. So mostly we're an Apple shop, as you can see. It's much bigger font. Doing stuff like versions and seeing, okay, hey, what are the major versions that we've got most of our devices on? You can see we're mostly, predominantly on 7 and 8 on Android, and 11.4.1. We've done a really good job. iOS people seem to update a lot faster. It's great. But you can really start to visualize, hey, how are we doing with getting rid of some of our older, getting our users to upgrade from the older OSs. So. Sometimes you want to pull your own data in and take action on that. It's not all about just what's in the console. There's other information that you need to make business decisions. So you can take reports out of AirWatch. It's great. There's some good stuff in there. The custom reporting has really made things even better. But sometimes you'll then have to either schedule that report or whatever. Sometimes you just want to refresh it and be done with it. Set it up once, and then it can be as up to date as you want it very easily with the APIs. So, for example, I've taken a report out of SCCM here, and a report out of some APIs out of AirWatch, and correlated the two to see who's got a laptop and multiple devices in AirWatch. So I can help to again make some business decisions on that. So metrics and monitoring, something very important to executives. They like to see pretty dashboards. They like to see all the charts and the graphs and everything. So that's very nice. But also we like to make sure that everything's running healthy. So We've got to have dashboards to help us monitor and make sure that everything's going as it should be. So I like to use APIs for that. It's very easy with just a few API calls to be able to build a dashboard. So I've got an example of a dashboard here that I've built entirely with APIs. But really, there's a couple key components to it. There's an API to get your device counts for an organization group. If you're taking that on a regular basis, you can then build that into historical data, which you can chart out in a nice graph. Smart groups, the assignment groups in Workspace ONE is a very powerful method when you combine it with API, because it does a great job of being able to keep track of the devices and their states. So you can make a smart group that's all your iOS devices that are employee owned, for example, but only iPhones. And you make that smart group. Once you've got that made, you can then call the API of that smart group to get the devices listed out of it. And again, if you're doing that on a regular basis, you can then chart over time, how am I growing in my employee count versus my corporate account, and all that sort of stuff. Makes it easy to visualize, but just have to make a few smart groups, and then AirWatch does the magic of keeping those up to date, and you're just taking that data and interpreting it on a regular basis. And then I've also got an example in the bottom left. You can't really see here, but it's a table of just the device count, the current device count of all my OGs. So you can kind of see, hey, here's where most of our devices are. Here's things. And how that can grow and shrink over time. You can chart all that stuff out. APIs are not the only thing that Workspace ONE has available to you, though. Syslog has been part of AirWatch for a long time. Goes through your ACC, so you can enable it with the enterprise integration. You can define the data format that is outputted. And all the various variables that are available. I've got a copy of here's what I've got exporting. It's going into our SIM and available to use. Built this a long time ago, but it's still valuable today because your APIs are going to be request driven, right? So Syslog gives you availability to get some event data on a streaming basis. So if I want to see, for example, certificates issued and revoked from our CAs, I can see that in real time and see how many enrollments we've had that day and that sort of stuff. Kind of chart out how things are going. Are they enrolling iOS or Android devices? You can even get into some of the details, like where someone is in an enrollment process. Did they accept the EULA? Did they go to is it configuring? Is it in the auth part? All those events are different events that get driven out through Syslog. So you can see, hey, if you wanted to analyze that and say, okay, people are getting to the into auth and they're not getting any further than that to enroll. Okay, well, we've obviously got something there, or maybe they're not liking what's in the EULA, so they're deciding to abandon at that point. So it's really good information you can get there. One downside is it hasn't been updated in a long time. So it's got some fields, it's got a lot of good data in. Other fields, the data fields may be missing or empty, depending on the event. So, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. I definitely recommend utilizing that. It can be very helpful for doing monitoring, especially if you're in a SaaS environment like we are. It's helpful to get that onto our on-premise SIM, so we've got those events there. Another thing you'll want to do is to take things and do BI with it, right? So you want to not just help you manage your environment, but you want to help to give information that's going to help influence business decisions on the product, on your use of it, on maybe on some initiatives that are going forward. Using the REST APIs, you can do some really cool stuff. I've got, for example, I've charted out what percentage of my admins, we've got over 100 admins that get into AirWatch on a regular basis, and what landing screen are they configured to use. Not an easy thing to look at in the console, but you've got all that data in the API, so you can start charting that out and say, okay, hey, why are people going straight to the user group page versus the dashboard to look at that, you know? Also see, hey, what time zone are they in? So just some interesting, fun stuff to look at. But also the ability to chart out, again, your operating systems, be able to visualize that, how are upgrades going as people upgrade stuff. Our DEP deployments, which organization groups do we have our DEP profiles assigned to and stuff like that. How many devices do we have in each of those organization groups? There's a lot of great APIs to do that. One thing to remember though is you don't have to just use reports or APIs for stuff. Sometimes there's some great data that's not available in those, but they are available in a list view, which you can export and get it as a CSV. Feed that into whatever you want to do some analysis on. So it's all about using what's available to you. There's, for example, one of the things that I built out is our admins, when they log in, what information that gets logged in the event log for when they authorize and log in. They get the browser they're on, the IP guys was how to page the data, because a lot of the AirWatch calls are all coming in pages of data. So if you've got thousands and thousands of devices, you can't do that all in one call. You're going to have to break it up into multiple pages. So I've got in my code some of the stuff you can do to recurse that. Can be very helpful for tackling that. But then I don't want to just deal with reports. I want to actually take actions. So when I talked about removing bulk tags, that's one of the scripts that I built. I've got it up on GitHub. It's on code, VMware code, cross-posted there. So be able to take a list of devices or something that's already got a tag on it, and then just remove that tag or add a tag based on a list of serial numbers or device IDs or anything like that. Some of the APIs you'll find can handle bulk actions that you can, it's a post call and it's got as much data as you want to throw into that object. Some of them are going to be individual per device calls. So again, you're going to have to build a list and then iterate through those. So you'll be doing a lot with for each loops and try catches and all the other fun stuff you do when you're writing scripts. So definitely encourage that. Again, got some stuff already written. I've been working on moving this out of just having some individual point scripts into making it into an actual PowerShell module, make it a little more modular, and be able to add stuff, new features in a little bit on a more consistent basis and stuff. So if you check out my code page, I'm sure I'll have some updates on that as I make some progress on that, get some of that up there. So some of those resources I've already mentioned. Code.vmware.com's got some good samples there. There's my link, as well as just do a search there. There's you can search for stuff on Workspace ONE UEM. There's not nearly as much stuff as there is out in the vSphere arena. There's a lot of Power CLI stuff out there, but there is some AirWatch related stuff. Definitely suggest looking at that. I mentioned earlier, the other big stuff, the API documentation. It's out there. The old PDF, there used to have a PDF. They've moved into this online documentation style, but there is still the old PDF. I found it. There's a link to it. It's about 1,000 pages, and it's got a whole bunch of stuff with sample this and that. It's got a lot of stuff that's not as easy to find in their online API documentation. Stuff like pick lists and stuff like what you may get a numeric value back, and that means Apple, and 2 means Android, and 5 means Symbian and stuff. It's not easy to find that in the online API guide, but it's in the PDF, and you can use that to help fill in some of the holes that's there. But the API documentation that's online is really good. It's a Swagger style site, so you can actually try things out. You can put your own stuff in. And get a sample response back and all that sort of stuff. It's really good. Definitely recommend a lot of time with it. I forgot to put it on here, but hopefully everybody knows about Postman. If you do anything with REST APIs, you probably know about Postman. It's also great for being able to visualize the data and help you to build your scripts, so you know what you need to parse back out of that information. I haven't yet, but I plan on taking some of my Postman stuff that I built up and cleaning it up, taking my stuff out of it, and then posting kind of a shell with some of the APIs there. So you can just change it to your server name and do that. So I'll probably have that up on my GitHub as well at some point in the future here. But another thing that I didn't cover earlier is next to the API, this picture on the right is the system integration settings and stuff. It's where you go in to enable the API settings. There are some SOAP APIs. If you're writing an agent replacement, then that's your thing. But the REST API is really where you want to be. That's where all the good stuff is. There is also above that an event notification, which sends a webhook, and it's another event-driven system besides syslog. So if you prefer getting events in by setting up a web listener, you can do that, and then take that event and do whatever you want with it on the back end. Send it to whatever system you need. But that is pretty useful. It's very, if you spend any time with if then that, it's very similar in how it's listening for those commands, and then you can write something to take action when it gets a specific event notification or something. It's not as robust as what you'll see in the syslogs, but there are some really good event-driven stuff in there. Stuff like updating an OS update. When a device updates its OS and reports in as a newer version, it'll report that in as an event. So I've got some stuff hooked up with a SharePoint online site that just adds that to a SharePoint list. So I've got a list of, hey, we've got 200 people that upgraded to iOS 12 today or something. So again, it's not great information, but as you're kind of building your tool set of stuff, you can definitely take use of that. Anyone have any questions? No? Well, we got one. Awesome.
I'm curious, so you say PowerShell is something that you use?
Yes, I would say PowerShell is the one I prefer when I'm writing scripts and stuff. Everything that I've written, I'm not using anything that's Windows PowerShell specific. Actually, I wrote most of it on Mac, and I've tested on Linux too. So it's all PowerShell core compliant stuff, which it's really good. It's nice and easy. I've done a lot of web development in TypeScript and stuff too, and I find it very similar, and it's easy for me to kind of context switch between the two. So.
And the dashboards you were showing, is that what you're using for your dashboard?
The question was, what was I using in my dashboard? So what you saw screenshots for included Splunk, included Power BI, you name it. If I've got a tool to play with, I'm probably going to pick it up and play with it. So I've done stuff in both Splunk. I've got some of that stuff built in Splunk. All my syslog stuff that I showed was in Splunk, and Power BI. It's been really nice actually to play around with that. It's one of the things that you can get when you are using the APIs is you'll get some fields that aren't in your regular reports. There'll be some UUIDs that then you can relate to another table. So you'll have if you pull all your tags in, you'll have your device IDs for each tag, and then you can relate that to your devices and find all the devices that then have that tag and get your friendly names from one and pull them into the other. So it's really nice for aggregating them together. One other thing that I want to show is something that I've built again with APIs. I don't have this available out there, but once you let's see, where's the movie? There we go. It's a little demo of an app that I wrote for doing some of the console stuff on the go. So it uses Face ID, allows you to search by a username or a serial number, and pulls up that information from the console. Gives you some actions you can perform on it. You can look at the apps that are available, if they're installed or not, all the status there. You can swipe left or right to install or delete them or remove them, and do the same thing with profiles. Show up here in a second. Be able to do stuff like lock the device, query it remotely, all that sort of stuff. So me and a few of our admins use this a lot when we're out and about. It's really quick and easy to get into. So this was not a whole lot of work for me to, and I'm not really a good web developer, but I picked this up and rolled with it with the APIs. Is pretty nice and easy to work with to get the data. Once you've cracked the nut on a couple of the APIs, it's just plugging more in and then interpreting your data back. So with that, just want to say, got a follow-up.
What language are you doing?
Great question. The question was, what language should I build this in? It's in Ionic, which is a abstraction on top of Cordova. So that's why it's got some of the plugins for Face ID and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's JavaScript. It's Ionic's kind of a hybrid. It pulls in Cordova, but it's mostly Angular and uses TypeScript for that. So definitely recommend it. IonicFramework.com. It's a really neat web language. Again, it allows you to compile it then into for an iOS native, Android native, web app, progressive web app, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. It's good. Yes, sir.
Mapping this up with VMware SDK.
Oh, the question is, have I tried wrapping stuff with the VMware SDK, like this one? No. However, one of my projects that I've been working on is improving this. Right now, you have to manually configure it with the API key and the server name and all that stuff. I built some sample code to test this out of actually using the what do they call it? Trying to think. Some of the stuff to allow you to push settings directly to it. Blanking on the name of that right now. But to be able to configure it, so if I push it out from the console, I could push those API keys, those settings, everything, so you wouldn't have to manually configure the app. So, yeah, you definitely could integrate it with the SDK. Any other questions? All right. Well, got one.
You mentioned the PDF. Do you know if there's the plan to actually integrate that and code into the Swagger application? The PDF,
When it's going to be?
Yeah, when it's going to be inside the application.
I don't know. The question was inside the PDF that I linked. There's some stuff there that's not in the Swagger documentation. I don't know if or when that's going to be put in. I haven't opened any tickets to see about when they might be adding some of that in. But I definitely recommend taking a look at it and pulling that PDF down, though. It's got some good stuff in it. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone.